Recorded Books presents Assassin's Creed Mirage, Daughter of No One, by Maria Lewis, narrated by Samara Naomi. Chapter 1. Fustat 824. No one survived this prison. That's what Roshan had been told from the moment she was brought here. You will rot. The bearded guard spat once he'd hurled her inside the cell and slammed the cell door shut behind him. She smiled at his back, a grim expression the man never saw. Thankfully, survival was not the priority. Escape was. As someone who had spent her whole life escaping prisons of numerous varieties, she was confident she could find her way out of this one if she just had enough time. That was the problem, as she soon learned. There were very few women in this shared prison cell, and even fewer who survived more than a day. She was lucky her attire made it difficult to spot her as female, and fortunate it remained mostly intact, even after she'd been thrown in the cell with the other prisoners. The billowing layers of fabric made her seem like a slight street urchin at best, but male, critically. Despite this, she remained in danger. Roshan had been there a week, and much to her chagrin, if she hadn't been constantly defending herself or running interference on attempts at her life, she would probably be breathing fresh Fustat air right about now. Of course, the air of Fustat was anything but fresh. Amongst the hustle and bustle of the city markets and the intoxicating allure of various spices, there was always the underlying scent of manure. If you breathed in deeply, odds were you'd end up coughing and spluttering a mound of the fine red sand that seemed to coat everything. And yet she missed it. Deeply. She longed for the chance to run her fingers along the edge of her windowsill, streaked with remnants of the latest dust storm. She hadn't loved the city when she first arrived, but compared to the bowels of prison, Roshan viewed the surface as a heavenly oasis. Fustat was famed for the towering pyramids that stood tall on the outskirts, even though the rulers who'd made them had long since passed. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was in a monument just as great but built in subversion. Her prison was an inverse, pointing down and deep into the earth, which of course made that pesky escape concept even trickier. Not impossible, just trickier. Roshan knew that to get out, she would need to navigate her way up, as she'd learned there were several levels below her going further into the earth, and several more above. She wasn't at the very bottom, which was the only positive thought she could muster. As far as she could guess, her cell was located 5 floors below. Blood had been pouring from a cut above her eye when she'd been dragged down, down, down. Her vision had been obscured, so 5 floors deep was as much as she could gauge. But she trusted her instincts. While she might have been hurt and bleeding, she always kept track of her surroundings. She always found a way out. While her arrest had been violent and caught her by surprise, she thought she'd covered her tracks well. Her first order of business had been fixing her vision. She couldn't fight what was coming if she couldn't see. One look at the lumpy brown water that was supposed to be their drinking trough told her that if a drop of that got near an open wound, infection was imminent. She had navigated around the perimeter instead, with the cell being really more of a pit. The walls and floor were carved from softer clay from top to bottom, except for one main wall, which had a grate running along the bottom of it to bridge the small space between the prison bars and the clay floor. Roshan figured it maintained the structural integrity of this awful place. 2 barred and ungrated ominous-looking doors sat in the middle of the wall. At least 100 prisoners were all crammed together in the space. Roshan searched for a pocket of space away from them, where she could slip into obscurity, and everyone would go back to doing whatever they were doing before she'd arrived as the shiny new plaything. As she moved around the edge of the crowd, she ducked lower and lower until she was practically crouching. A sense of malice rolled off a tall, skinny man with a long beard that dangled from his chin, like an insidious black...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.